we've made some mistakes while planning our previous 6 Alaska cruises. So we want you to learn from our mishaps. We've put together this list of the common Alaska cruise mistakes and easy ways you can avoid them when planning your trip way up north. Up next. Welcome aboard, cruisers. I'm Don B from Eat, Sleep, Cruise, where we help you see the world one port at a time, and a special welcome back to our Eat, Sleep, Cruise subscribers. Now, before we dive in, if you have any questions about Alaska cruising or cruising in general, please leave them in the comments section below as we answer every single question. Now, some of our Alaska cruises have been the most expensive trips we've ever taken on a per day cost. Not only is the cruise itself more expensive, but so are the associated costs. So one of the biggest mistakes we see cruisers making is not budgeting appropriately for their Alaska cruise. For us, these splurges have been well worth it. Dog sledding on a glacier or taking a float plane through the misty fjords are experiences we will never forget. But we knew ahead of time that they would be pricey. Not to mention flights, hotel stays, and all the other add-ons can quickly add up when budgeting for your Alaska cruise. Now, we've had some individuals balk at our budget advice, but we can speak from experience of cruising to Alaska for over a decade. Alaska cruises are more expensive than comparable trips in the Mediterranean, the Caribbean, or the Bahamas. And while Alaska cruise costs do depend on several factors, we suggest cruisers budget anywhere between $300 to $600 plus per person per day for an Alaska cruise. For the two of us, we've easily spent close to $10,000 on some Alaska cruises. But you can quickly look at all the costs associated with cruising to Alaska and run the numbers for yourself. Now, if you need more advice, right here on YouTube, we actually have a complete video of how much it really costs to go on an Alaska cruise that covers all the costs associated with the trip, as well as how much you should budget for each category so you can have the right Alaska cruise budget for your trip. Perhaps the most frequent question we get is, what's the best cruise line or cruise ship in Alaska? And honestly, that is the completely wrong question. We sailed with 5 different cruise lines in Alaska, each with their own pros and cons. But the best really all depends on your preferences. However, Alaska cruises are more about the destination than the ship. So what you should really be focusing on when picking an Alaska cruise is the itinerary. It is true that many cruise lines offer 7-night cruises that stop at similar ports. Many of these cruises will have calls in the state capital of Juneau. Other popular spots are Skagway and Ketchikan. While not as popular, other towns like Icy Strait Point, Sitka, or Haines might be on the itinerary. But these port stops are not all created equal. When investigating the itineraries, it's important to look at the port of call times and the number of hours in port. Some cruise lines spend only half a day at some stops, like Ketchikan or Victoria, British Columbia. Others have more full days in port, giving you more time ashore. Further, all cruise lines offer scenic cruising to one of the region's glaciers, say Glacier Bay National Park, the Dawes Glacier, or the Hubbard Glacier, which are among some of the most popular. But, in our opinion, some glacier sightings are better than others. There are also one-way itineraries versus round-trip itineraries. For many, a round-trip cruise from Seattle might be the easiest to plan. However, one-way itineraries usually offer more ports of call. These tend to head north or south from either Seward or Whittier, Alaska, or Vancouver, British Columbia. So don't pick an Alaska cruise solely based on the cruise line. Look at the itinerary options and where you'll visit to decide what appeals to you the most. All major cruise lines offer at least one ship that sails in Alaska, and some cruise lines offer several ships. Thus, there are many options when cruising in the region. Even after picking an itinerary, there will likely be several ships to review. Each cruise line has its own onboard vibe and atmosphere. Norwegian Cruise Line is known for its freestyle approach to cruising. Holland America Line and Princess Cruises have the biggest presence in Alaska and offer more onboard enrichment, while Royal Caribbean, Carnival, and Disney Cruise Line are more family focused. While it is true that each cruise line is unique, even within each cruise line's fleet, there is also variability. Assuming that all cruise ships from a line, say Royal Caribbean International, are the same in Alaska is a big mistake you don't want to make. Some of these ships are mega ships, like Norwegian Encore or Royal Caribbean's Ovation of the Seas. However, both cruise lines offer small ships sailing in the region as well. While the itinerary might be more important when picking an Alaska cruise, you do still want to compare ships across the different cruise lines. You'll want to pick the cruise ship that has the most onboard amenities, activities, and features that appeal to you and your travel party the most. The Alaska cruise season runs from the middle of April to the end of September, early October. The peak time to visit Alaska is the end of June through the middle of August. This time will have the warmest temperatures, the longest daylight hours, and the best chance of seeing wildlife. But if you pick this time, you can also expect cruise ships to be filled with families. Not to mention, there will be several ships in port each day. Cruising in the middle of the Alaska cruise season also means the highest prices. Thus, we highly recommend sailing during the shoulder season. This is the first few weeks of the season and the last few weeks of the season. During this time, there'll be fewer crowds and lower prices. Sometimes cruises during the beginning and the end of the Alaska cruise season can literally be half the cost of sailing during the middle of the summer. We would rather you cruise at the off times and opt for a better room or spend the money on one-of-a-kind shore excursions. We've sailed to Alaska in literally almost every month during the season. On all our trips to Alaska, we've had mostly seasonable weather. Regardless of when you cruise, it will rain in Southeast Alaska. But we have been able to experience all the region has to offer whenever we travel. The one exception is that some shore excursions may not run very early or very late in the season. So if you have your heart set on one of those experiences, you may need to pay a little bit more money and sail in the middle of the season. Let's tackle another topic that's hotly debated when it comes to cruising in Alaska, and that is whether or not you should upgrade to a balcony stateroom. We agree that picking a ship with various areas for sightseeing is important. We like ships like Norwegian Encore, which offer many indoor and outdoor viewing areas. But we still think having the ability to get out of bed and open your balcony door to view all Alaska has to offer is worth the upgrade. Maybe even enjoy some coffee on the balcony while admiring the views or scouting for wildlife. Admittedly, this is not worth it for everyone. If you are on a budget, you might want to allocate your funds elsewhere than splurging for a balcony stateroom. Given the wide range of price points for staterooms on a ship, picking the right cabin comes down to your preferences and your budget. If you can only sail during the summer because your kids are in school, maybe you can save some money by opting for an interior cabin. Or another option is to opt for a guaranteed cabin. This will guarantee you have a certain stateroom category, but you won't be able to select your actual cabin. The cruise line will assign it to you prior to your sailing. Another option to save money on a cruise cabin is to book a lower category with the hope of trying to bid for an upgrade closer to your sailing. Of course, not all cruise lines and sailings offer this type of bid program, but if it is available, you can likely score a balcony or better for much less than the initial booking price. Perhaps the biggest Alaska cruise mistake has to do with packing. Sure, we've certainly overpacked on our first Alaska cruise, but since then, we've gotten more strategic about what we bring with us in our luggage. What time of year you travel might affect some of the items you pack. But regardless of when you go, you will need layers. Everyone in your travel party will need a packable raincoat as well. It will rain, so be prepared. Plus, a pair of comfortable walking shoes is vital. But you don't need snow boots, just a heavier pair of wool socks will do. We also suggest a pair of lightweight, waterproof pants if you plan to do a lot of hiking or tours on the water. However, you don't need ski pants or thick winter jackets. You probably won't even need big puffy sweaters either, but you know your own temperature regulation best. We suggest several medium weight garments such as long sleeve shirts, sweatshirts or lighter sweaters, vests, and lightweight packable puffer jackets. If you go toward the end of the season, you may need some thermals for those early morning sail in and out of ports of call. And definitely in the middle of the season, you might want to pack a pair or two of shorts and even a couple t-shirts for an exceptionally warm day. In our experience, you can easily see 30 to 40 degree changes in temperature throughout the day. You could wake up to a temperature of 35 degrees for glacier viewing in the morning, and it could get close to 70 degrees by late in the afternoon. So you will still want accessories like hats, gloves, scarves, and other essentials like sunglasses, suntan lotion, and bug spray. Back on board, dinners are more casual than in other regions. Plus, many cruise lines offer self-service laundry, so you could wash some clothes mid-cruise if you want to reduce the amount you pack for the trip. Just be sure to check if your cruise line does indeed offer this. With Alaska cruises being expensive, one mistake cruisers make is waiting until the last minute to book. For us, we usually book our Alaska cruises 8 months to a year in advance. In all instances, the cruise price increased as it got closer to the sailing date. So we suggest booking as early as possible. Right now, all cruise lines already have 2025 Alaska cruises on their websites. In the rare instance of a last-minute deal, any cruise fare savings will probably be consumed by paying for last-minute airfare. Also, booking at the last minute often means that popular tours and cabin categories are already sold out. For many, going on an Alaska cruise is a bucket list trip, so we suggest booking early and taking advantage of lower fares. Plus, you'll have more time to pay off the cruise and research what you want to do in each port of call. We've been on over 80 cruises, yet whenever we book a cruise, we always use a trusted travel advisor. Booking our Alaska cruises was no different. While the cruise lines do offer plenty of information on their websites, we suggest finding a travel professional to help you through the process of reserving your trip. For those who don't cruise often, a travel advisor can help you compare the different ships and itineraries in the region. Plus, they can offer advice on shore excursions at the ports of call, or things to do on board the ship. Our travel advisor friends are invaluable sources of information. Along with ensuring you pick the right Alaska cruise for your travel party, travel advisors offer additional benefits. Often, they can provide perks that make booking with them a better deal. These perks are usually in addition to any of the cruise line promotions. So the travel agent might be able to get you onboard credit, a free specialty dinner, free Wi-Fi or gratuities, and maybe even discounted drink packages. And it happens sometimes that travel advisors have access to group rates. These are cruise fares that are typically lower than the cruise line's advertised prices. Even if that's not the case, booking with a travel advisor is usually a better value than booking directly with the cruise line. For many, an Alaska cruise means a rather long flight to the embarkation city. Even though many will make up time heading west, one of the most nerve-wracking things you could do is decide to fly in on the same day of your cruise. The worst thing you can do is spend money on an Alaska cruise and miss the ship. After all, the cruise ship will leave with or without you. So we always suggest flying in the day before the trip. Doing so provides some wiggle room in case there are any travel delays or issues getting to the ship's home port. You don't want to be stressed if there are some unforeseen travel disruptions. Also, many of these departure ports are fantastic cities to visit themselves, like Seattle and Vancouver. So why not get a head start on your Alaska adventure and spend a few days in your embarkation city? Just like booking the cruise, you can miss out if you delay on booking your tours. The most desirable shore excursions often sell out quickly. Whether you opt to book with the cruise line or directly with tour providers or third-party shore excursion providers, it's best to secure those highly coveted shore excursions as early as possible. For instance, whale watching in Juneau or helicopter tours of Mendenhall Glacier are among the first to go. These tours have limited capacity and are often the first booked. Thus, we have been known to book some of our excursions just days after putting down a deposit on a cruise. This is especially true for those once-in-a-lifetime experiences. If the price changes, you can often cancel and rebook, or contact the cruise line for a refund. We wouldn't want you to spend all this money for your Alaska cruise and not get to experience all the state has to offer. So, book those tours early. While we don't want you to miss out on exciting shore excursions, that doesn't mean you have to book one at every port. During our cruises, we've certainly explored the ports on our own, visited museums, or done short tours instead of all-day outings. Towns like Skagway and Ketchikan are very walkable. These towns feature saloons, shops, and local historical sites and exhibits that are easily explored without a tour guide. Icy Stray Point is also an easy port to explore on your own. It has restaurants, a mill museum, and enjoyable walking paths that don't necessitate an excursion. Cruisers can also pay a fee for the gondola ride up to the top of the lookout point for a small hiking trail. While we don't always have a shore excursion booked, we do always have a game plan for each stop. Even though we've been to many of these locations several times, we always find something new or interesting to try. If nothing else, we can always grab some local food and a beer while enjoying the beautiful surroundings. Alaska is definitely not the place to stay on the ship during a port of call. The video and photo quality of smartphones have come a long way, but some of the best memories we have from our Alaska cruises were captured the old-fashioned way, with a camera. We're not saying you need to go out and spend thousands of dollars to purchase equipment. For a few $100s, you can easily rent the newest DSLR or mirrorless cameras and zoom lenses for the week. I took my old Sony Alpha 6000, a pretty basic mirrorless camera, and rented a few extra long zoom lenses, which were well worth the money. Along with cameras and lenses, travelers should also pack binoculars. These will certainly come in handy for wildlife spotting. Other gear you might want to consider bringing are action cameras like GoPros or 360 cameras. Again, you can also rent these, but do look for cameras that are waterproof if you plan to do any kayaking or water-related activities. When taking an Alaska cruise, the schedule can be a bit hectic. Early morning ports of call are not uncommon. There is scenic cruising throughout the day. Plus, with 18 hours of daylight, it is easy for your biological clock to feel out of sync. That's why it's important to get plenty of sleep on an Alaska cruise, but we don't recommend sleeping in. There might be early morning sailings by fjords that you don't want to miss. Walking the outdoor decks or enjoying breakfast on your balcony is the ideal way to spend a morning. Instead, take advantage of downtime for a nap before dinner, or call it early one night before the next day's port of call. Also, we suggest booking early morning tours. The odds are that you'll have more favorable weather conditions and be ahead of the other tours from the several ships that may be in port along with you. Even if you have a later day stop in a port, getting off the ship as soon as you can will help you beat the crowds and ensure you get to see and do everything you want. Of course, travelers visit Alaska for the ports of call, but this doesn't mean you should skip the onboard enrichment. Many cruise lines offer captivating and well-curated presentations, lectures, and other themed events during the voyage. These are sometimes the best part of the trip. We always attend the various lectures and informational sessions where we have met Iditarod race champions and watched local artists craft their next masterpieces. Many cruise lines routinely feature local cultural experts and historians on board during the cruise as well. These talks can range from learning about the First Nations people from a Tlingit princess to a presentation on the history of Glacier Bay National Park. We've also learned about the sordid history of Skagway humpback whale migration, and Alaska stampede towards statehood, all on a cruise ship. So make sure to review your cruise ship's daily schedule or its app to see when these events are occurring. Bookmark them and don't miss out on even more ways to immerse yourself in all that Alaska has to offer. Now that you know all the Alaska cruise mistakes and how to avoid them, we need to find you the perfect Alaska cruise. Well, lucky for you, right here on YouTube, we have a brand new look at the top Alaska cruise ships and itineraries. So whether you're a couple, a solo traveler, a family, or a multi-generational group, we have the perfect Alaska cruise for you. That way your trip way up north is smooth sailing.